Hi, everybody. I'm Colleen Byrum. I'm an admin on Mediumship Development Forum and Mediumship 101 Development Group on Facebook. And I am so honored and so excited to have my guest here with me today. Her name is Elisa Romeo, and she is the author of this extraordinary book that we're going to be talking about today, Meet Your Soul. Elisa is a licensed marriage and family therapist and intuitive, but we're really going to start talking today a lot about what intuitive means, especially in this context. I'm so happy to welcome Elisa. Hi.
Hi, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so excited for this audience in particular.
Well, these are truly your people, because everybody viewing this, at least on our forums, will be mediums and intuitives. You know, I just want to editorialize for a second about this book, which I'm going to hold up again. Every once in a while in life, if we're very, very lucky, a teacher or a bit of guidance or a book comes into our lives that can lift us up and just sort of become this wind in our sail that sets us on a new course or our course of greatest potential. And I really think that's what this book is. This is well beyond the contours of mediumship. This is bigger than that, although mediumship, as we understand it, is certainly a part of it. Elisa, can you talk to us about how the book came to be?
You're going to make me cry from that intro.
Oh.
I mean, that was my prayer and intention when I was getting the downloads around writing the book, was that my soul, who I call or calls herself Sophia, was very clear that she didn't want just more content in the world about spirituality, psychic abilities, or even soul. Like conceptually, she was like, I want you to make this book a transmission so that when people are reading it, they're having the experience of meeting their soul. And by the end of the book, they will have met their soul and be really clear about her or him as an entity and in a direct relationship with that energy, instead of a heady, more concepts of soul, what it is and what it isn't, but a real experience of that part of ourselves.
It is exactly that. The book is an experience, and it absolutely is transformational. And I will also add that I read it, I thought that I had read it when it came out, which was 4 years ago, if I got that, 3 or 4 years ago. And I started reading it again in preparation for our conversation today, and it has re-rocked my world. I'm really kind of, I don't know, I'm a little flustered this morning because I was rereading it again this morning before our interview, and I'm awash again in new revelation about the book. But can you take this time to talk us through this idea of meeting the soul and how we, in our conscious more ego-based mind, approach that concept?
I love how you put that, because I feel like the soul is always using opportunities in our lives to work us on an egoic level and to help us become in relationship with her. And my background is as a psychotherapist, as marriage and family therapist. And when I started doing this work, I asked Sophia, what's the difference in what I'm doing now than just psychotherapy? And she said, before, it was really about your relationship with the client and holding that container, an energetic space for the projections between you and them, and helping remove those projections so they can come into a fuller version of themselves. And she's like, this isn't about you and them. This is about them and their soul. So you're the midwife helping them take projections off their soul. And I think we have a lot of projections on our soul. We have a lot of projections on the divine or God or love, whatever we're calling the intelligent hum of the universe that has a love plan. And so it's really, I think, all the work's about taking the seeds out of our eyes and helping us get to a place where we're being penetrated by the divine and allowing that light to just spill through and change us. And I think the sign of spiritual maturity is being able to tolerate that level of love and light that actually does, it is like sitting in the flames a lot of times. And I think that's kind of what separates the beginners from more of the advanced spiritual workers, is they're like, they can tolerate facing shadow, facing darkness in the world, facing darkness in any dimension, and finding the love within all of it. And so yeah, I don't know, I could go off. See, I'm already tangenting on all these.
And I'm not going to rope you back in. I just want you to, that's fine. You know, one of the things that does occur to me from what you just said, though, is how there's a certain amount of sort of foundational psychological health that I think is important before being eligible to undertake this work. I mean, if we don't have at least a determination to find our way to self-love, then I'm not sure we can go further on that journey.
I agree 100%. And I don't think this book would work for everybody. There's people who are definitely not ready for some of this material and wouldn't understand some of it, because maybe what they're doing in this lifetime is really stabilizing the ego, basic, survival issues or things like that. Although there's definitely people who can be dealing with survival issues and still be working with their soul. But I think a lot of it is, sometimes, strengthening the ego to a position. I talk in the book about, I think people talk about ego in different ways, and some people talk about it as annihilation of the ego, so that you're not being controlled by that part of yourself. But because of my background as a psychotherapist and all of my Jungian work, I see ego not as a negative thing, but because I've worked with so many schizophrenics and people with like a splintered and non-functioning ego. So to me, the ego is really a beautiful thing when it's in service of soul, when we're using the ego not to just run down its own path of accumulation of wealth and killing resources on the planet, or just, achieving different things in our head of relationships or whatever the little ticking the boxes are. But we're really humble with the ego and understanding that it's an important part of us, but only to the degree that it's in relationship to love. So really getting the ego, I think what Meet Your Soul is getting the ego aware of, it's like the map of the playing ground, and then disciplined in order of orienting and being accountable in relationship to the love plan of why we incarnated. So I really believe we all come here for really specific soul reasons. Actually, I guess it should make sense a little bit about what happened to me, like where my story, because that's where this all comes from, is when I was in Pacifica Graduate Institute down by Ojai, in Carpinteria outside Santa Barbara. It's a depth psychological Jungian school. And I had an out-of-body experience where I left my body. Some of you probably listening can relate to the idea of feeling yourself as more than your physical body, which is shocking enough, right? When you're like, oh my gosh, like I am really going to exist outside of this physical container. And so who am I as an entity? As I am a presence, as a essence, as a being. So first having that experience, and then so seeing my physical body down below, and then feeling pulled up into this like love cloud that envelops me, and then having memories, like download reminders of who I was before I was Elisa Romeo, why I came to the planet, why I chose my mother and father in terms of the soul lessons we're working out. And all these things were crystal clear to me that my ego didn't know 5 minutes earlier. And then also seeing, I had like a mini life review, which was a life review, as some of you probably know, it's like a movie of your life, but on a real feeling level, and also seeing other people's relationship to that moment through other lenses. So it's like a very revealing and shocking and educational experience of really, it was so funny because, I mean, I was going to Pacifica and my whole thing was soul. I was reading tons of books, Thomas More, James Hillman, I was obsessed. Anything with soul would really stand out to me. So I always loved the concept of that. But then when I went into that out-of-body experience and joined my soul and then saw my life from my soul, it was this experience of she saw my life very differently than my ego, which is like your personality, your understanding, your conscious self saw my life. So she was really like, you're missing the mark. Like, you don't know me. you don't feel me as an entity. You're not in relationship to me. You're in relationship to intellectual ideas read through books from other people, but you don't actually know me. And why this matters is because when you die and have your life review, It's from the perspective of your soul. So it really matters to the degree that I'm actualizing or living the life that she intended for me. The fact that if I can clearly understand if she's happy, you know, and I think soul's always loving and patient and waiting, no matter how much we're off the track. But at the same time, she is beckoning for us to join and to listen and to become humble enough to take our marching orders from her on a daily basis and consistently choose love over fear in every moment, and to not do that intellectually or conceptually, but to really embody that energy. And I think that's the difference about what's really creating heaven on earth, is every person that does this inner work is creating a portal for love energy, which to me is a face of the divine, to incarnate onto the planet and literally change the vibration of the planet through that permission. I don't talk about this a lot because it's a little more out there, but I feel like this group can get this more. Is that when I was writing Meet Your Soul, I had an astral experience where I was in a dream state, but then went into more of like an astral travel experience, and saw the matrix outside of the planet, basically, which to me looked like a golden grid, but it wasn't a positive golden grid. It was like a dark energy of kind of like how people sometimes talk about the Illuminati. I don't like to get to be a big conspiracy theorist, but I mean, the energy felt like there's a small percent of entities that have all the power in terms of the resources and the psychological consciousness war that's happening down here. And then I was so depressed when I came back into my body, and I was just weeping when I woke up with this feeling of like, what's the point? Like, we incarnate into this system that's really challenging to penetrate through on a real, true authenticity level. And then Sophia showed me the image of like Light Bright game when you're little, which is like that black paper and you poke a hole with the little colored
Pen.
bulb, or whatever that little pen thing is. And she showed me every person who does this work from Meet Your Soul bypasses through the matrix. It's like the get out of jail free card. It's like when you plug into your soul, you cannot be manipulated or controlled by other entities. You can be, and this sounds so out there, but it's really basic. It's like little things like if you're in a manipulative relationship and some of those energies are coming through that person, even if they're not conscious of that, you're being controlled by the grid energies. And when you connect your soul's voice, your intuition on it, like, how do I really feel about this relationship? What's really going on with this person? What does my soul want to tell me about how to empower myself and live this life? What are the soul lessons I'm learning from this relationship? What are they learning from this? That just like, it's a game changer, because now you're connected to really truth and love on whatever topic you're in. You know, if you're at work and feeling like you're in a situation that's really frustrating and not like in your highest good, if you plug into your soul and ask, why am I in this job? What am I learning here? How can I navigate these energies from a really true soul empowered place? Like, you're out of jail, you know? So to me, it's just so exciting that all of us as humans have the ability to do this. It's so phenomenal to me that I even do this with children, like 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds. I'll change the languaging a little bit to make it developmentally appropriate. But what's shocking is how we can all do this. Like, even little kids are amazing.
And just let me hold up the roadmap for how we do this and Meet Your Soul. This has got everybody knows that I love exercises and specific technique, and that is exactly what's in the book. Can you step us through, can you connect the dots? Because we're here in this conversation talking about meeting our souls and taking that guidance directly. Can you connect the dots between the ego, the soul, and the highest of the high?
Yeah, I really see it like we are multidimensional beings, meaning a lot of times we're raised kind of thinking of ourselves as our ego. So it's like, I'm Elisa Romeo, I'm Italian, I like pizza, I'm playing tennis, and I have a value system about specific things. And, you know, so there can be depth to the ego as well, but the ego to me is like what we think we know about ourselves. And then there's our presence energy. And I think the image of like, the iceberg is really telling around this image, because it's like the ego is that little part above the ground where we see it, and it's everybody else sees it, and it's pretty obvious. But then where we come from is this huge mass under the surface that has past life memory and soul intentions, why we came here, and the accumulation of everything we've been through in other lifetimes, and which is held together by our soul mission. So what the book really teaches is, how do we as egos enlighten ourselves by getting into contact with that part of ourselves, our presence or our essence energy, that part that's the divine spark. I see it like God or love is the ocean, and then souls are like the raindrops. And so we're made from love, but we're also separated in the sense that we're individuated. There's like souls have different flavors and feels to me. Like we're doing different things here, you know? So it's not that what's right for me is right for you or right for everybody. And that's why I think it's so important to connect to your soul, because there's not a lot that's just really right or wrong, you know? It's much more about what is your soul doing in this lifetime, and then how can you help serve that mission, which is always a love mission. You know, but sometimes it just looks really different how that wants to come through.
I think some love missions are about creativity. It might be visual expressions of love, so that it resonates when people see a painting or a sculpture or what have you. Yeah, there's all different ways of showing love. Service is a phenomenal way of showing love. And many of us are at the mediumship communities, we're largely servants. We want to serve spirit in this way that we bring healing to people who are suffering. So I think what's powerful for our mediumship community about Meet Your Soul is that it may expand the mediumship and or personal mission in ways that we cannot anticipate. And at a minimum, this is going to create phenomenal accuracy across the board, not just in sort of evidence, but accuracy and exponential healing in the people who are arranged to come to us. We're going to be more effective in every way by following this phenomenal lighthouse beam that's coming out of this book.
I think it deepens the value, because to me, you know, a lot of people in their spiritual openings, the psychic stuff opens, right? And then the mediumship opens, and that's usually part of the spiritual evolution. But psychicness in general can be used for ego purposes and not necessarily in service of soul. So to me, and I think you can feel that, I'm really picky about what mediums or intuitives I'll go to, because I'm actually requiring a lot from my person, in the sense of they're aware of their shadow work. They're not power tripping subtly in how they're giving me the information, or manipulating or shifting the energy based on blind spots in their own psyche. So I think what happens a lot of times is some psychics will just give you the fourth dimensional astral information. But what happens when you can talk to your soul is it helps you talk to other souls on a really 12th dimension, is kind of how I see it, level, which is the sainted self of the person. So if you've got a mother coming through that was an alcoholic, abusive to her daughter, and your client's the daughter, you can read accurately, yes, what happened in the physical lifetime when she was here, of specifics about the mother, but you can also then now look at the soul lessons about what were they working out in their incarnation. And you're talking to mom's highest self, even if mom is still on her journey in the afterlife of processing that. And I had a client like that yesterday. He was kind of an abusive alcoholic father, and he had passed a couple months ago, and he'd gotten his life review on the other side, and he was crossed, like there wasn't a problem with his crossing, but he was still deep and almost like the psychotherapy on the other side about emotionally processing his life. So I was talking to his personality in that dimension. And then I was also talking to his soul, that he still wasn't, you know what I mean? There's still a difference between where he was consciously navigating from, and then his higher self, and then helping him to connect with that, and then helping his daughter to heal through that information, which was so, to me, it becomes like multidimensional family therapy, you know?
Absolutely. And I think this is really esoteric, a very esoteric thing to get into. But I know from my own work as a medium and from working with others in Circle and elsewhere, that when spirit communicators come to us from the other side, I think it says a lot. This is tricky to get into, but I think what the medium brings to the reading is key. And I think it is important that we have the capacity to perceive the full range of what that spirit communicator is showing. For example, I get a large number of, I tend to get a lot of people who had sexual trauma and sexual predation and whatnot in their life. So their offender, their uncle, father, whomever will come through. And there is a very specific way in which these men come through. And I am clear that what they are showing me is what the sitter needs to hear from. It's not necessarily the be-all, end-all of who they are on the other side. It is the aspect that needs the healing for themselves and for their victims, if you will.
Definitely.
And that moreover, it takes incredible courage, fortitude and resilience and commitment to healing on the other side for them to come forward in this acknowledging state. So there's a little sideline on mediumship there today.
I agree 100%. In Seattle, I worked at Shepherd Center, which is an incest survivor agency. So I totally agree with you on all levels of that, on the psychological healing that's necessary and how we can continue to heal those wounds even when some of these people are on the other side. And I think that's what's so beautiful. You know, when you're saying earlier, like, talking about mediumship and then who's potentially listening now, what I see as the soul lessons often with mediums is we are the forefront of consciousness of helping people understand that love is eternal and that we do go on and that it's not worms meet game over at the end of whatever years, but that consciousness goes on and the love story goes on. And we're like the narrators to that story. We're able to speak to that in ways that people who are just completely identified with the physical world and materialism in that sense cannot do this work. So I think and you know what else, why I love this audience, because I think the cojones, the ovaries that it takes to do this work is I could start crying because I feel so, it takes a lot of courage, and it's hard to say things that the majority of society want to interpret as fringe, crazy, dismiss it, minimize it. And I think it takes great courage to stand up to that energy, which is a matrix energy, like I was talking about before, and be like, no, I'm going to bring this healing and love through, even if that makes me looked at a little weird from certain family or friends, and I just have such great respect for everyone listening, because I know you have to walk that potentially alienating spiritual path to do this work. So that's why I really feel like these are my people too, because I can relate to that path for sure.
Well, I thank you for saying that. I think that's very apt. And the discussion of how we as mediums navigate our identity in the world with integrity and respect. We don't want to shove it down anybody's throat, but nor do we want to hide in the closet. And it's a real balancing act.
Definitely. I went through after I went to grad school, I went through a psychic program in San Francisco. That was 3.5 years, Psychic Horizons. And that's where I really learned my ethics and I had incredible grounded models of people I really trusted and could validate my information. And I call it my Hogwarts school, because I really needed that period of time, because I did have trauma around the rationalism of my parents. So I needed to have, like a safe place to really come into some of my gifts and accept them,
And to stand in your own authority gracefully, and with which grace always allows for everyone to have their own stuff. That's what's tricky about it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about with all of this.
I know we can go on and on. Well, but on that note, let me just bring part 1 of my interview with Elisa Romeo, author of Meet Your Soul, to a close. We're going to have a part 2. And anybody who has any questions, I invite you to post those in the comments below, and either I or Elisa will get back to you about it. Elisa, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All right, we'll see you guys in a little bit. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.